to the Druid Healing Guide for patch 6.2.2. What I'm going to be doing is going over an overview of some statistics you would need, certain gear, what you're going to be doing, minor healing rotation, some talents that you actually need, and some different things that you do in different fights for current rate progression in Hellfire Citadel. So to begin with, I'll go over the stats and their priorities. So first you got haste. This should be your #1 stat for anything that you have. Most of your gear should be prioritized with haste on it if you can do that. Otherwise, you'll be doing mastery and multi-strike, which should both be as even as possible with the gear choices that you have from Hellfire Citadel. And then lastly, spirit. I'll explain the importance of spirit later on when it comes to gear, but for that sense, haste, mastery, multi-strike, and mastery equal about the same. As your tier progresses and as you get more into your intellect is getting higher, you won't need as much spirit as you would need as progressing. So I would assume if you're in heroics and you're progressing some mythics, early mythics, you probably will need a little bit more spirit than somebody that is fully clear mythics. If you are progressing out of normal into heroic, you probably need a lot more spirit. I would say you probably should aim for right around 1800 to 2200. Anything really less than that, you're going to need a lot of intellect and spell power to make up for that amount if you do get into sketchy situations. So to start off with, for some of the gear, obviously I got 4-piece, as you can see. 4-piece for Druid is very good for the healing Druid. Life Bloom, 30% chance for bloom when it periodically heals. So it says if I were to put a Life Bloom on somebody, it'll sit there and it'll randomly, periodically do a burst heal, so to say. Next, you should be using your helm, shoulders, chest, and legs as your 4-tier pieces. You don't need the gloves are terrible stats for the Druid, and there's no need for them. The best ones drop off Archimond with the haste and mastery. So again, haste, mastery, and multi-strike, or multi-strike and mastery equal on your stats. The staff is the absolute best one you have that you can get. That's also off Archimond. Has the most haste, also has mastery, and there you can also do, if you want a little bit more mastery because you have too much haste, which should never really be the issue, you can also do the fist weapon with the offhand off of Manaroth to combine those two. Now with the current patch we just recently got, we can upgrade our gear. So there's not really any reason why you shouldn't be able to pick up a 4-piece off of normal or heroic and then be able to upgrade it to a very decent amount and be able to do well. So I'm going to go over some of the gear that I have picked up that you guys can look at. Haste, spirit. I'm still rocking a little bit more spirit. I have planned to be dropping a little bit more, but for most people sitting around the heroic to early mythic progression, you're going to want more spirit than this. So let's go off with trinkets here. There's a variety of trinkets you can really use. So you got the Seed of Corruption, or the Seed of Creation, which is really good to use for any really stacked fights going on, such as Archimond. There's a lot of stacking. Tyrant, there's a lot of stacking. And Gorfiend, there's a lot of stacking. This does really well. Your overall trinket you should never take off is your demonic trinket. This has got 413 intellect, 413 haste on mythic, upgraded of course, and it reduces the mana cost of your spells. It's very good with it sitting at around 1700 spirit. I barely see me spamming Rejuve cast. You can almost blanket the raid with it and it'll be fine. Other trinkets you can use, Flickering Fellspark has all your main stats on it, and also the ultimate and the best one at the current patch, Unstable Fellshadow Illusion. This is great because your heals target leech for 10 seconds. They grant the target leech for 10 seconds, and it's equal to 0.45% of the effective healing done. So the more healing you're doing, the better this is going to be. and basically just give everybody leech that you're giving heals. As a raid healer, giving the entire raid heals. Leech is just basically they're healing themselves for a ridiculous amount. There's a couple add-ons you can see how much that this is actually tracking and how much it's actually healing. You can try to download those and take a look at them. It's a very significant amount. There's most fights I can do 30 million healing just with this trinket. It's very good. Anyway, past that, your ring, obviously you should be using any kind of legendary ring that you have, the healing one. This is really good to use for certain things, such as when you want to use this as a gore fiend during his phase where you do extra damage and you stack in the center. You want to use this then. Certain parts of the fights, this is great to be designed around so that you can basically put out as much healing and be able to put a little bit of bubbles on the people that you did heal afterwards. Use that Haste Spirit trinket or Haste Spirit ring. These boots are BOE boots that drop off of Hellfire Citadel. You can pick them up off the auction house, try to get the mythic ones, and get them just to drop off the trash. As I went over before, those to your legs. The belt, this is off Archimon. Very good belt. It has the Mastery Multi-Strike. It has the 2 secondaries on both of them on the same item. So this is probably your best bet since you can't really get a haste one with both stats on them. Third, we got the Gorebound wrist guards. This is the haste mastery off the first boss in Hellfire Citadel. This came off a Gore Fiend and Haste Spirit enchant with haste. There's another thing I was going to go over. Everything should be enchanted with haste. This came off of Fell Reaver, and that obviously came off of Gormrock. Everything should be enchanted with haste. If you see everything I have in haste, 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 and the only thing I do have enchanted differently is my weapon with Mark of Shadow Moon. That's just for some extra spirit. Usually it procs at the beginning of the fight, so I can put out such as the Wild Mushroom. I can go ahead and do a Wild Growth. You know, it's very expensive and still get most of the mana back when it does proc at the beginning of a fight if I need so. So let's go over some of the talents that you'll be using and glyphs. Most of the time I use Displacer Beast, actually almost every time. Ysera's Gift. The third tier here can really be just fight specific on what you're going to be needing to do. If you need to mass entangle some things, or you need Typhoon to knock them back. I always use Tree, Incarnation Tree. This again is another one depending on the fight. Incapacitating Roar would be good for Kilrog if you have to go downstairs and heal. And they're all just depending on the fight. You might have to do different things for certain ones. Heart of the Wild. This is my favorite one. Mostly, you can probably use this one or Nature's Vigil. Heart of the Wild is going to do your most healing, especially once you really get some gear going. And you can use this with Tree if you really need to. I don't. Usually I just use it for any sort of big raid heals with Trank. So if we're getting ready to go into a lot of damage, such as Feast of Souls from Gore Fiend, I'll probably Trank with this up. It gets the most healing done. And finally, Germination. 2 rejuves on the same target. That is absolutely hands down the best one you could possibly do in that last tier as a Druid healer. You can't beat it. You can put 2 rejuves on a tank. It's instantly healing him. So at one time, let's go over some of the rotations here, and then I'll go over some of the glyphs. So let's say you're healing. You're going to be using your Life Bloom on your target, your main tank usually, and your off tank, because with your 4-piece you can put them on 2. Always try to keep both 2 rejuves up. So what I'm using is Voodoo, so this is something you should look at and see in your main tank and your off tanks if you have Voodoo. Now what do I do at the beginning of the fight before I even start is I cast a Healing Touch. For this reason, it gives you Harmony, which is periodic healing increased by 28% because of my mastery. This is important to have at the beginning of the fight, because when you pre-hot the tank, that's an extra 28% healing being done to the tank. And immediately on most stack fights when I'll put down a Wild Mushroom. This is good to have down. It's not terribly expensive, especially at the beginning of the fight. I usually always lay one down just due to the Mark of the Shadow Moon proccing on my weapon, and the mana is going to come back anyway. So just drop it. It's extra healing you don't have to do for 30 seconds. It's going to pick it up immediately. What you really need to be scarce on is your wild growths. They're very expensive. 12,000 mana. They're very good for healing at a high amount in a short period of time over the course of 5 to 6 people if you have it glyphed. So if there's some people that drop pretty quickly, you can't get all 4 of them up at the same time, obviously, so therefore you need to be able to cast a wild growth. I usually do that, cast wild growth. I'll cast a couple rejuves if they haven't came up pretty quick from the other healers doing a quick flash heal or so. I'll go ahead and use Genesis. Genesis is really useful for tank healing and also pretty much any kind of AoE quick healing that needs to be done. If you know the fight that's coming up and you need to be able to quickly heal players back up to full health, pop a rejuve on the players that you need to heal and Genesis as quickly as possible. Nature's Swiftness, always use this basically anytime a tank drops below 50%. Instantly will I use Nature's Swiftness and drop them up. Pretty much anybody, really. I try to save it mostly for tanks if I know the fight they're going to be getting hit hard or I have a squishy tank. But most of the time, with me, I don't have to worry about that, so I usually use it on most of the raid members. Haste, food, get a rune for your increased intellect, and always use intellect flasks. What I do in between to keep my reju or my life bloom up on the targets is you'll see me when I make another video of me actually doing my healing. I'll constantly cast a healing touch. Healing touch, 2,500 mana, extremely cheap for a large heal, and it refreshes your life bloom. Usually this will get from your spirit regenerated pretty quickly. You don't really have to worry about it in most fights. And then when you're not doing anything in any sort of fight or no healing needs to be done, you automatically just use Wrath. That's pretty much about it. So some of the add-ons that I use, just in case anybody's curious. Bartender is everything here on my bars. I also use Scata, and I also use, there's an Ice Hut, that's what you see around the sides around my character here, and Voodoo as my healing spell, healing out. So if you have any kind of questions or anything, please leave comments below, and please subscribe. This will let me know if you guys have any questions when it comes to Druid healing. I will release a few other videos showing me actually healing and showing you different things that I'm doing with the coordination on how to heal, where it's more needed for priorities in healing. This will help dramatically with anybody that's struggling. Please subscribe. Thank you all for listening, and I hope you guys enjoyed the video.